My name is Melanie Putman. I'm the Community Outreach Manager for the Oneonta Division. And we have a number of subject matter experts that are in the room today that are responsible for different areas of our business. We will be going over, actually, I'll just move forward here. Basically, we're going to be looking at our economic development programs for both commercial customers and what may be available for municipalities and the community in general. We'll be discussing the Transforming Energy Resiliency Program, which, again, Cindy Chadwick is the Director of Public Affairs, will be providing an update on. I'm sorry, Bill Rogers is Manager of Special Projects. We're going to be discussing recent infrastructure improvements projects that we've got, either getting ready to kick off or will be coming in the future. And then we'll also, if we have time, we'll look at our rebate programs for both commercial customers, industrial, and so forth. We'll also be having some discussion about the gas, the derider line, as well as our innovation programs that we've got with the technology that we've got coming down. So basically, I don't know how much y'all know. One of the questions that we had was, how much area do we cover? We've basically, the southern tier is our service territory. In Oneonta, we serve, or the Otsego County, we serve the majority of the area except for that list. Except for Cherry Valley, Roseboom, Decatur, Worcester, and Maryland. So all other towns in Otsego County we cover. It's about 40% of the upstate area for our service territory. It's close to about 894,000 customers, electric customers, and about 266,000 gas customers throughout the state. And again, the Oneonta division that we have encompasses 11 counties, with Otsego being one of them. So, and basically that's kind of the overview of our service territory in this area. Joe Rizzo is our Manager of Economic Development, and if Joe is ready, we can start discussing.
Ready.
Thanks, Melanie. Good evening, everyone. I wanted to give you some highlights in terms of economic development, and the first of which is kind of how we look at our role for economic development for NYSEG and RG&E. Can everyone hear me back there? Yep. Okay, good. So one of the things, kind of looking at some of the highlights here, but really we look at economic development as giving back, to our communities. We look at job retention, creation of and growth of new businesses, and we're really looking at a catalyst. We literally look at capital investment in terms of projects that we have, and we have many, many projects across New York. One of the other things is we look at ourselves as really a key partner in terms of partnerships at the local, regional, and state level as we look at projects for business retention, as well as helping businesses to expand and also to attract new business to the state. And just to put it in perspective of how busy we've been and how busy we are across the state is since 2010, we've invested over $92 million in economic development assistance to help businesses across the state, nearly 600 projects and $5 billion plus in terms of private sector investment. And then in the southern tier, when we had hurricanes, tropical storms back a few years back, we helped utilize economic development funds to help businesses in the southern tier as well. And currently we're about 350 projects we have across New York in terms of businesses. So pretty active programs and so forth. What I wanted to give you is very, very high level. There are a whole number of economic development programs that we have for NYSEG as well as RG&E. But at a high level, we have grant programs that help with infrastructure for businesses, and it could be pretty sizable grant assistance. But businesses, and we look at the capital investment, we look at the infrastructure, but it basically is to help businesses in terms of offsetting the cost of infrastructure. What I mean by that, it could be transformers, switchgear, physical electric infrastructure. And it could be on the customer side as well. So we can support mixed-use development, so we could have projects that may have some business, more than 50% business use, but we can have a portion of residential or possibly retail. Another program is another infrastructure type program that's more targeted toward vacant buildings, brownfield development, et cetera. Another program in this community may be interested as well in some opportunities, but in this small ag program, small to medium agriculture businesses, we broaden it to support cideries, distilleries, microbreweries. So if there are businesses that are looking at making expansions or bringing into the area, there are opportunities for grant assistance in that broader craft beverage industry sector. Also on the business energy efficiency, this has been a program that's been in place for quite some time. It's to help supplement in terms of energy efficiency programs for lighting, HVAC, a whole number of things through either NYSEG or now also within our own programs that we can provide supplemental assistance. And the last one on this slide, it's an outreach grant program that can help IDAs, for example, in terms of their marketing, website enhancements, so those of that nature. We have grant programs to help a more strategic kind of initiatives to help communities as they start to want to kind of promote their communities out to the public. Some of the other programs that we have that we've helped work with some businesses actually in this community is a power quality program that can kind of take a look at, in some instances, in terms of behind on the customer side of the meter, there may be equipment that's overly sensitive to any voltage variation. You know, we stay within our tolerances of the company, but in terms of sensitivity with new technologies, this is a program that through a power quality study, we may be able to help support, some grant assistance for power conditioning equipment. This other program here, this commercial corridor program, this is a program that also for municipalities can kind of apply for, or developers. But this program right here actually can help support exterior facade lighting. We're looking at kind of redevelopment in terms of areas that may be more distressed. So we can help not only with infrastructure, but actually help offset the lighting, the cost of the lighting themselves. So there's an application process with all these programs. But that program might be something of interest in this community as well, that municipalities can actually apply for, or developers. But we need to understand kind of the footprint that you're looking at and kind of have an overview of the project itself. So next program gets into it's called our manufacturing program, so the small to medium manufacturers. It's not infrastructure, but it helps to support businesses that are looking at, could be training, new opportunities for product development, all the things that can help manufacturers become more competitive in the global marketplace. And that program's taken off. We have many hundreds of projects going on with this particular program across the state. And actually, we really work through high-tech organizations that do the screening for the application process. Moving down in terms of, we have a program that's more designed for innovation zone districts. We started in the Rochester area, and we had envisioned that these districts are going to be across New York, across NYSEG, and across the state. We're finding that these innovation zones are not really kind of a smaller footprint, more regional footprint. So that program, we're going to be evolving that program to help broaden it across New York. The last program here is analogous to our electric infrastructure. This can help on the gas side. So if there are costs to natural gas to a facility and or inside the customer's building, we can help to offset costs for piping, valves, and those kinds of things. But it's pure kind of infrastructure if they meet program requirements. So we've kind of given you a whole level. I'm kind of giving you a 30,000-foot view for sake of time, giving you an overview of the variety of programs that we have in place. What we're doing here is we're proposing some modifications to further enhance some of these programs, and we're being very strategic in nature. For example, I mentioned the business energy efficiency program a minute ago. We're, in terms of what's happening in New York and looking at more of renewable technologies, we're going to broaden that. It has to be approved by the commission, but we're broadening that to help support studies and implementation of clean energy technologies, whether it be solar or battery storage or some forms of electrification in terms of types of technology. So, and in addition, we're also going to be requesting some workforce and training dollars to help support communities with workforce. The other program, I mentioned this program for outreach just a minute ago. We're changing the name to that to more strategic outreach program. It's going to encompass beyond like marketing and websites, but things that can help with early stage site development and soft costs for site preparation. So we want to get more site ready and market ready to help attract businesses to New York. And also coupled with that is also some assistance for workforce training, but also from a regional perspective, not an individual smaller area. When we start to look at workforce, it's more of a regional perspective. So that's kind of what some of the things that we're doing for, and I'll go to the next slide. And then the other program gets involved. We talked about this innovation zone that was more of a district. We're going to look at broadening that to help have it more from a regional perspective, to help the innovation zone and entrepreneurship across New York. The last program that we're going to propose through the Public Service Commission is that a residential pilot for geothermal and air source heat pumps. There's a lot of discussion about this. These technologies have been out there for a long time, but in areas that we may have constraints with natural gas in the service territories, we'll be looking at supplemental assistance, so additional grant assistance to help support those areas. Or if there's a business that may be expanding and it may be challenging in terms of additional gas load, these other technologies is another alternative to help for that particular project. Kind of giving you some overview of our programs. This is at a high level I want to talk about, and we talked about this back in January. For site selection in terms of real projects, here's some key information that we need when a new prospect is looking at coming to New York in this area and across the state. We have an actual form that we've created that asks for this key information in terms of electric demand, peak hourly. We need to have peak information in terms of how we design the system, types of businesses, and kind of period. So this is kind of a high level, and we have a one-page simple form that we'll send out for projects of this nature that the planners can use to kind of evaluate infrastructure capability to serve a project. At the bottom here really ties to what we talked about with our proposal for site soft costs and site preparation, but the information that we would kind of need for someone looking at sites is really looking where businesses are going to be located, the type of projected loads, and all that information so we kind of evaluate infrastructure capability to help sites get further developed so they can be put in the eyes of the site selector community and their prospects. Some of the things here, so we've kind of talked about the program, some of the things with enhancements that we have, but as we start to look at all the things, and we have a lot of questions about energy that we've seen that have come through, it's very, very important, and we talked about this at the last event here in January, this forum, but it really, in terms of communities, really trying to take a hard look at beyond energy, but also looking more about how you look at workforce, how you look at available real estate, all those other elements that combine with energy to look at how you want to develop your community. So that's kind of what we had there, is kind of looking at a roadmap for your future. And the other key thing is that it's very important that communities and all the stakeholders are aligned on what you really want to do in your community and what's kind of realistic for what you have and how you can kind of really promote your assets and attributes across the communities in terms of developing within and also attracting new business. So that's kind of this third bullet about this holistic approach with workforce and community development. There's all those other elements that need to be looked at from a holistic perspective. And then the other piece is this whole business relationship piece. We have a lot of incentives that we can offer for businesses, but it's very, very critical when we're trying to bring a new business into New York. The trust and the relationship piece needs to be up front before any of the other things in terms of dollars, et cetera. And the last thing is in terms of, and I think this might be the last slide, is really how to apply is just go to NYSEG.com, and that'll kind of start the process for the pre-application. And then we would start and connect you with an individual who can kind of work with you individually on each of the programs. So I think that's, and there are some contacts. So that's it from me. Who's next? Is that?
Going to be Bill.
Bill, you're up. Thank you.
So, as Mel mentioned, I'm Bill Rogers. I'm the construction manager for our group of process and technology is the technical term, and resiliency is a subset of that. I was formerly the regional manager for both Oneonta and Liberty divisions, and I'm an Otsego County native, born and bred. So, part of this resiliency program that we're taking part in right now, it's a new group that we've put together. Process and technology group has been around for several years, but we've branched out. We've started this group. We call them resiliency, and we're enhancing the resiliency of our company infrastructure to better withstand the impact of severe weather and decrease the outages and minimize their impact. Some people call that hardening. We call it resiliency. We also use the term hardening automation and topology. And I'll get to that some down here. So we took a 30,000-foot look at our system, group of designers and planners, and we identified many projects that we're going to tackle over the next 10 years. We're going to invest $10 billion just in these projects. These projects are, that does not mean that the normal projects that go on in the division from day to day, divisions in Oneonta, Plattsburgh, Lancaster, all the way across the state, Central Maine Power, United Illuminating, RG&E, those projects are still going on. This is a separate entity for us, and we're going to get these projects done in the next 10 years. What's included in the project are pole replacements, reconductoring. Reconductoring is changing the wire conductor that's up there, for those of you that don't know that. Normally, it's increasing the size and the efficiency and the longevity of that conductor. A lot of conductor that we have is old, after we've been around for 155 or 60 years, something like that. We do have aging infrastructure. It just stands to reason that we're going to have that. So a lot of that is addressing those issues. Infrastructure hardening, like I said, resiliency and hardening kind of go hand in hand with us. We want to be able to withstand the storms that happen. Sometimes it's not just storms, it's just a tree falling over, rotting, falling over. There's a lot of other issues. There's storms, hurricanes, that type of thing. So we want to harden the system. Hardening the system means bigger poles, more poles. If you shorten the spans between each pole, shorten the span between poles, the conductor has a little bit more support, less strain on that conductor. It means it's going to potentially stay up there longer should something fall on it or should a storm occur. Voltage upgrades and topology. Get back to Ohm's law. If your voltage is higher, you can carry more load. It stands to reason. A lot of the system in Otsego County was built back in the day. The voltages were much lower. Whether it was transmission or distribution voltages, those were lower. Now we've kind of settled on a couple of voltages that are going to be our standard bearers, 12,000 and 35,000. They can carry more load, so there's more capacity for customer growth. Topology is relocating where we need to, along with the voltage improvements and the capacity improvements. You've been around Otsego County, you can see where the line goes across hill and dale, even if it looks like it's a main line. It's shortest distance between 2 points back in the day when they were built. We're looking to move a lot of that stuff back out to where it's more accessible for us to maintain and operate. Network automation is, we have an energy control center where they're kind of our nerve center. There's a lot of technology out there that allows for remote switching applications, very similar to communications. Verizon, telephone, they can turn you off and on from a switchboard. It seems like when you're on the phone with the operator, we want that ability in our energy control center. We have some, but it's not as broad as it could be. There's been a lot of upgrades and improvements in the systems, and we really want to get more on board with those and move forward with that. We want to be able to control the outage much more from that energy control center. Advanced metering infrastructure, AMI, those are, some of you familiar with those. We do have it in some areas, there's some pilots. That's the meter that technically we don't have to go out and read, or we don't have to read it very often. It gives the customer a much more advanced level of monitoring their own usage and how they pay for that usage. Vegetation management is just that. Vegetation is our biggest cause of outages throughout the state, and we're looking to get back to a much more defined management system, which means wider right-of-ways, cutting more trees, cutting the danger trees that are near those lines, and maintaining that in a much more user-friendly way.
And Bill, that would also include a more, a 5-year cycle trim, correct? So it would be a much more set cadence.
Yes, we're working on that in some areas. We have some pilot programs with a 5-year program. Other parts of that are part of our work forward with the Public Service Commission. So, just locally, one of the projects, like I said, this is a new group. The resiliencies, we like to call ourselves the team, task force team. We've identified the jobs that we want to do, spread out across 10 years. Because we were new, we picked up some of the more local division projects, if you will. And one of those in this area is right here in our backyard, where I spent most of my day today. There's 2 substations in Cooperstown, one right next to the price chopper, the other one is down in back of the NYSEG building, and that houses the South Cooperstown 275 circuit. So we are rebuilding the majority of that circuit. We are increasing the conductor size, we're shortening the span lengths. We are going to increase the capacity, therefore we're going to convert the voltage from 4,800 volts to 12,470 to allow more of that customer growth. We are implementing that ground to sky tree clearing on this job. So basically, if I can give you an overview, it goes across Phoenix Mills Crossroad, goes across the river, goes down County Route 33, pretty close to the Milford area, and identified farther down in the resiliency program, I couldn't tell you exactly what year it is, because it's a 10-year plan, I don't have it memorized, but there's a project in there for the Milford 227, and we're going to build this Cooperstown, South Cooperstown 275 with the preparations in mind that we're going to be able to tie that with the Milford 227 circuit. So if you will, County Route 33 goes down the back side to Milford to 166, then if you did a big circle and then came back up Route 28 back to the Ford place and South Phoenix Mills Crossroad, look at that big circle. South Cooperstown is on this end, Milford is on the other end. We're going to convert that Milford 227 circuit to 12,000 volts, and we're going to have in there the ability to tie those circuits together where needed, kind of like I was talking about with the Energy Control Center. There'll be a series of switches so that if the problem was over here on this side, we're going to be able to open here, and keep these customers on this side, that type of thing. If you picture your house 3-way switch, that's really what it is. I can go upstairs and I can turn on the switch when I'm up there. If I want to turn it off when I'm downstairs, it's great. So just kind of picture the 3-way switch concept. So other projects that we have in resiliency, I'll just hit a couple high-level ones that we're currently working on, just to give you an idea of what we do. Up in the northern part of the state, in Plattsburgh, there is, up in the Harris Lake area, there's a generator that we rely on. It's a diesel power generator. When we have power supply issues up there, storms, outages, that generator fires up automatically and powers up the majority of our customers up there. That is a very remote area. When that does fail, or when we do have outages in that area, there's other areas that are left out. We're actually, part of our resiliency team is installing 2 more generators up there, and they're going to be looped together with that whole system. so that we have the ability to do just that. If a certain part of that is out, this generator is gonna fire up and it will feed to that point, or this point, and those people that are still out of power, much smaller in number, the crews will go out there and make those repairs and then put the system back to normal. So that's what we are in our resiliency group. So.
Okay. So, as Bill has explained, what his projects are more distribution circuits. So, we also, in part of the resiliency, we also have transmission projects and substation projects. So we are looking at our whole system. It's not just, individual communities, it's across the whole region. And one of the, couple of the projects that we have identified is the Morris substation in the town of Morris. We are planning on expanding that slightly as far as the footprint of that, which will allow us to put 2 lines into that, 2 46 kV lines into that. And as Bill said, you get larger lines coming in, you can carry more capacity. So one will go to the existing Pierce Ave substation in Oneonta, and the other one is going to be connecting to a new Morris substation that we are planning on putting in somewhere around Morris, somewhere in the town of Morris or near Morris. So, and again, if you think about it, we're building this new substation that will allow the looping for all intents and purposes, the looping of the transmission system between East Norwich, Colliers, which is just north of Oneonta, and then the Fraser substation down in Delhi. Currently, right now, we have our large substation is down in Fraser, down the town of Delhi. What we plan on doing is bring up a new 115,000 kV line. Again, this is just coming into focus, so we still have a lot of planning that we have to do. But in order to get more power into this region, which is the whole point of this, is we're looking at a new 115,000 kV line that will come into the new substation. And then from there, we can put a 46 kV line out to East Norwich, another one out to Colliers, and again, that one going back to the Morris substation, which will loop and link all of the substations together. So if one area goes out, we can backfill, we can backfeed into an area. So again, this is more of our resiliency program that we've identified. These are going to be taking a few years, especially the new Morris one. That's going to be in Article 7 because it's a substation. So these are our future plans. Bill is working on the near to the future plans.
Melanie, you might just want to mention that when you see bulk electric system, you may see BES. That's what we mean by that. And this is really initiated by some FERC standards. So that's a little different than the resiliency program where the company has looked at its circuits to see which ones we need to work on from a resiliency standpoint. So they're a bit separate in that this is falling under what is called the FERC Bright Line project and initiative.
Okay, the Oxford Veterans Home, that was connected last year. These are photovoltaic sites that we've been in the process and completed. Let's see. That was Morrisville College. We did a large project up there and revamped that whole system and fed it from a different direction, made that much more reliable for Morrisville. This is the one in Lawrence. There's a large photovoltaic site in the town of Lawrence that we've completed our work on that. That's all ready for that cogeneration company to move forward once they've made their other plans. There are several PV sites in the Stamford area, Delaware County area. There's 3 or 4. I think they were currently on the docket. Whether they move forward or not, A lot depends on that PD customer or that PD company and whether they're gonna move forward with that. Significant Delaware County dairy farm, we basically rebuilt the circuit to feed that customer and give them the capacity that they needed. These are the three that I mentioned over there in the town of Stanford. The only other thing I wanted to mention about resiliency, well, we talked about how this is, the potential here is to tie that loop together. The other thing that we looked at when we're looking at it from 30,000 feet is just that. Not only are there substations, they radiate, this is a rural area, we don't have a lot of that urban connection points going on. So we build out to feed that customer over there. You know, there's 15 miles of line to feed 4 customers, and the same thing happens over here and over here. But from a resiliency standpoint, when we looked at it from a high level, we looked at it and said, South Cooperstown goes all the way down the back road. They're only lacking 2 poles to connect it to that Milford 227 circuit, just 400 feet. Same thing down here. You go down to Pop's Place, and I think that's the end of South Cooperstown 275, and HA's Windows and Doors is Milford 227. So there's places like that that are so close, and it's not just here. We've got places in Hancock, Downsville, where those 2 substations, we've built on those over the years, and they get to a point where we only lack a little bit. And that's kind of what we're looking at from a resiliency standpoint. So we're able to do much more of those loops and ties to keep people in service.
What does cogeneration mean in this context?
Cogeneration for photovoltaic sites is when they're energizing solar. Right now, I believe, and maybe Joe, you know this, because right now, if what they don't use for their purposes, I think we are still required to purchase back, right?
It's sell back into the grid.
Right. It goes back into the grid. So they're generating, so they're kind of co-generation.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Yvette Bombard. I'm the director for gas engineering for NYSEG and RG&E. The DeRider project was one of the questions that we received ahead of time. Hopefully you can hear me. I'll try to project. I'm told I don't project well, so if you don't hear me, put your hand up and let me know. Okay, back there in here, you don't hear me. Okay, I'll try a little hard to project a little bit better here. The DeRider pipeline is one of our transmission projects between NYSEG and RG&E. It is the only one at NYSEG. RG&E has several other transmission projects. Statewide, we were replacing basically transmission mains that were installed back in the 1950s. Okay, so the DeRider project is one large project. It's about 50 miles total that we'll be replacing over a period of 10 years worth of construction. That existing pipeline is about an equal split of 25 miles of 8-inch and 25 miles of 10-inch. We'll be replacing that with 12-inch steel. When we talk about reliability on the gas side, what we're saying there is that this is an aging infrastructure, and there are some threats to that main because of its age, so we are replacing it. It will not provide more gas to the area. That's one thing I want to be very clear on. Even though it's a larger diameter pipe, Dominion Energy is where we get our gas from upstream. So that's our supplier of natural gas into this area. And Dominion Energy is essentially what's called fully subscribed. So there is no more gas upstream, or so there's no more water in the pool, if you will. So no matter how much we put on the downstream end, we're not going to get more gas into this area with that 12-inch main. What the 12-inch main will do for us in the relatively short term, 10 years, once all that main is replaced with 12-inch, we will not need to run our Norwich compressor as frequently as we do, which also then means we won't need to interrupt our interruptible customers as often as we do. So there is a shorter term 10-year benefit to going to 12-inch. In the long term, a steel pipeline should last us 70+ years, as the existing one did. If things should change in New York State and Dominion Energy has more gas and this area still wants it, then that could be an option. But at this point in time, that 12-inch won't do anything for the gas capacity to the area. It is submitted as part of the capital plan in the rate case. It is a transmission level job, which means it's in Article 7. It has to be submitted to the Public Service Commission for permitting. We are in the process of developing that permit now. We've had that underway for a while now, working on that permit. And that permit process will be started this year with the application to the Public Service Commission. Should that project be approved to go forward with the Public Service Commission, 2020 is when we'll begin the public outreach. So you haven't really seen anything publicly on that yet. That would start next year, along with any easement acquisition that we need for that job. You can imagine pretty much with anything, if it's older, that the easements that we had back in the 50s, they're not the easements that we need now. So we need to revise some of that. The engineering plans will continue in 2021. That's some more of the permitting process through the Article 7, environmental management and construction. We would also begin procuring materials. A lot of these have longer lead items. It takes a while to get all the materials in place, so we would start purchasing materials in 2021. And then 2022 through 31, we would continue procuring the materials on an ongoing basis and be working on our construction. Our idea is that we're doing about 5 miles of main a year over the 10-year period. So that's our divider pipeline.
Okay. So my name is Mike D'Angelo. I am the manager for NYSEG and RG&E for non-wires alternatives and non-pipes alternatives. Two things I'm going to talk about today are the non-wires, non-pipes alternatives, but then also energy storage initiatives in the state right now. There's currently an upcoming energy storage procurement. This was ordered by the New York Public Service Commission in December of 2018. That directive from the state ordered each of the New York utilities to go out and procure a certain amount of megawatts of energy storage. NYSEG has the directive to procure a minimum of 10 megawatts of qualified service territory. That's going to be done later this year through a competitive RFP process. Something to note there that's important to note, that part of that directive is NYSEG will not be owning this energy storage. We'll be entering into contracts with third-party energy storage developers or companies, and that essentially we'll be entering into contracts to dispatch those resources when we need them. Non-wires, non-pipes alternatives. Essentially, these projects are alternatives to traditional utility investments. They're required to meet certain electric and gas system needs, and I'll get to that in a second. But essentially what they are is we look at finding lower cost alternatives to traditional investments to meet certain needs. We have a non-wires alternative program that's been in place for about 3 years now. We've done 5 procurements between NYSEG and RG&E. 4 of the 5 are still ongoing through a development contract negotiation period. The non-pipe alternative projects, we have 1 project now in the Lansing area of Tompkins County, and we're also currently developing processes and procedures to put in place to identify future non-pipe alternatives throughout our service territory. So non-wire, non-pipe alternative projects, like I mentioned, these are alternatives to traditional poles and wires or pipe solutions. They can consist of distributed generation, energy storage, energy efficiency, demand response, either fuel switching, which would be either beneficial electrification, air source, ground source heat pumps, CNG, LNG, or renewable gas, or any other innovative non-traditional solution that can meet the specific utility system need. These projects are very specific to system needs. I gave 2 examples here. Load growth in a specific area. Rather than upgrading a substation transformer, we may look at incorporating or interconnecting or strategically locating resources in the area served by that substation to essentially lower the load and defer that capital investment. System needs that cannot be deferred. Asset condition is really, I think, the easiest one to point to. You're not going to defer or eliminate an old substation from, transformer from leaking oil or poles from falling over by installing distributed energy resources. There's currently no planned non-wire or non-pipe alternative projects in Otsego County. However, we are monitoring all of our capital investments. We have a regulatory obligation to look at every capital investment we make and determine if it makes sense to do a non-wire alternative or not. I would point out that the projects that Bill and Melanie talked about earlier, those don't meet the criteria, the specific needs that we're looking at because of them meeting for compliance or reliability. So that's a very high level overview of our non-wires, non-pipes, energy storage initiatives. Thank you.
I think what we'll do, as Melanie mentioned in the beginning, we do have some slides on energy efficiency, and not to diminish the importance of energy efficiency and many new things that are happening at the state level with that, which will be rolled out by the utility. These were slides that were presented in January, if any of you were at the Energy Summit. We will give you this so that you have it. We put them in tonight just for anyone who had not seen things in January, but I do think in the interest of time, they're very self-explanatory. We'll probably just skip those, make them available to you,
Okay, sure.
and leave it at that, because we don't want to cut into the leadership team's question time. So does that work, Melanie, from your standpoint too?
Yep, that would be easy. I can certainly send you that, Bob. I can send you these slides tomorrow.
Okay, that'd be perfect. I'll distribute them to everyone.
Okay. With that being said, I think we're ready to address any questions.
Leslie's been reviewing them, and she will
There we go.
see which ones weren't answered, because I think you did answer quite a few of them.
Yeah,
So.
there are a lot of questions that you did answer. I've been taking notes. So I'm going to go through the questions that were submitted through the work group leaders first, and then we'll try to get to everyone else. Let's see, we had some questions on the future, like forecasting future loads for Otsego County in the face of moving to more energy efficiency, like heat pumps and things like that. Just wondering if you have kind of projected any of those load increases, and if your projects, the 12,000 kilowatt, 35,000 kilowatt, the ones you were talking about, and I'm not an electrical engineer person at all, I'm a biologist, will address that or be able to handle that increased load capacity?
In general, they will, because like I said, the more voltage you have, the more load you can carry. Saying that every new customer or every increased load is different. If there was a huge influx in growth, that still may cause some capacity issues that we would have to revisit with either voltage regulation or capacitors, that type of thing.
Okay, trying to read through here. I think that also went hand in hand with the,
I could address at least the energy efficiency and
Yeah.
heat pump part. And I don't think we've mentioned this before.
Stand up so we can hear that.
So I don't know if everybody knows this or not, but NYSEG recently filed a rate case, right? Energy efficiency and heat pumps are two big parts of that rate case. So a lot of that you can't discuss in detail because it is a rate case. However, it's public information, so you can go to the public service website, see the programs that we're proposing as a company, and become a party in that, and you can comment. You can review what we're proposing and comment on that.
would you be
I know
able
it doesn't address the load program, but
Would you be able to email us the links to those projects so we don't have to go through the entire list of the PSC?
yeah, because it's specific to one section of the testimony.
that we submitted.
We'll send you the case numbers.
Yeah, that'd be great.
For both, there's a NYSEG electric and a NYSEG gas, so we'll send links to the entire filing, and then we'll give you the specific reference for what Mike just
And I
talked
think a
about.
lot of
That'd be great.
the information that is in the rate case will address a lot of the questions that were answered.
Okay,
And just to go back to your question with the voltage conversion and the capacity, that is specific to those customers that are on the circuit that we convert.
right.
Okay, I just make sure everybody understands that. That 12,000 volt line goes down, but South Cooper's down 275, goes up to Flag Creek and beyond, and that's not going to address any capacity issues up
Up
there.
north.
It will slightly because there's less strain on the substation because it all goes back upstream. As it comes out of the substation now at 12,000 volts, theoretically there's more that we can put on that whole system. But as you move out and you load that system radially, that's going to show out there more than it will. So gain a little bit, but it's got to be what's converted.
I think that may go in line, there's quite a few questions on the alternative energy generation, distributed generation, wind, solar projects, and if the county has, I don't think in its current state has the capacity to take on those projects like more solar arrays or wind generation, and where's that taking into consideration when looking at the upgrades to the infrastructure?
So maybe I could explain a little bit how that process works.
Okay.
For us at least.
Okay.
If independent, I'll call it an IPP as a lot of people refer to it as an independent power producer, a company that wants to come and put a wind farm or a solar farm, they'll develop that project and they'll put in an interconnection application to us. We don't typically know about it until we get that interconnection application. Once we get that, we'll go through a series of engineering reviews and modeling on our system, both distribution and transmission, and see what the impact of that is on our system. And then we'll look at what system upgrades, if any, need to happen. Typically, once we have that number, dollar amount of system upgrades, that goes back to the developer, and they pay for those system upgrades for them to be able to interconnect to our system and operate.
That said,
That's a high level of how that process works.
Okay.
There's a lot more
There's-
detail in that.
there's some questions about if NYSEG could assist the task force with giving us preferred locations in the county for those types of larger
Yeah.
projects?
So at the distribution level, there's actually a map that's on NYSEG's website that you can visit, and it shows something called hosting capacity. I'm sure folks are familiar with that.
Yeah, we looked at it.
That shows how much distributed generation can be interconnected on a specific circuit at a specific substation. And that's all on the website.
Certain load, to a certain load.
To a certain level, distribution level only. Not the transmission.
The issue we're finding, and it's actually distinctly different from National Grid. National Grid actually has more transmission capacity for the application of solar arrays and so forth. But this is really tough to do anything with, is what we found out. I mean, the capacities here are like up to 1 megawatt of projects. Those are tiny, tiny projects. So I think it is a very good question of what can be done cooperatively with NYSEG to try to beef this up, make it so it is more capable of supporting distributed renewables.
No, we'll take that back with us.
Yeah.
Sure.
I think it'll help with putting the plan together for the county to be able to know where these projects can best be sited
Yep.
in terms of what
Yeah.
NYSEG and the infrastructure.
Typically, the larger projects are not something that you're going to want to interconnect in with one of these smaller distribution circuits. It's going to be fairly cheap.
But then the follow-up question is, where does the best way to fit that into the picture?
Yep.
Which is the next level up in the substation. So, yeah.
I think that would certainly be something that we could look at the team on.
Going through more of these questions, I think we hit on the load. Wayne, I was going through your questions. Did I hit on your what the gist of your questions were.
Yeah, I think the only thing I would add, just at an extremely high, we're going really high level now and well into the future as we become a more electrified society. And I think that's going to happen. Slowly but surely, it's going to happen. And right now at our county, I was always sort of curious, are we somewhat at capacity? Will we have, as you add in some of these additional lines, will we have 10% more capacity here? Will we have 20? Is there any sort of number, target number that you have in sort of your planning that tells us how much more we have to go? Because we are an oil burning county. And as those oil burners switch over to heat pumps, and you're going to just increase the load. And how much load can you guys take?
Yeah, it's certainly something that we're monitoring. I mentioned heat pumps and energy efficiency earlier. We're also looking at electric vehicle penetration. That's another big thing around the whole beneficial electrification. We are monitoring it and keeping an eye on different areas. I would suggest looking at the EV part of this forecasting of EVs and other electric applications as well.
Yeah, we have an old infrastructure, as we all know.
Yeah.
And so, I'm hopeful that as time goes on and we get through the next 10-year period, that we're not all of a sudden a real backwater because we can't even do anything. It's like somebody, a manufacturing firm wants to come here and they're going to have a lot of cooling capacity that they need. Suppose it's a food processor or something like that, and all of a sudden we got to say, well, gosh, we don't even have enough electricity.
We monitor the loads on each circuit annually. They study those, they check the load and the capacity where it is. But we're not able to say the county can do, this much or this much load the county, unless you'd have to get together that group and they could share whatever they could share. For example, the Oneonta division, it's one of the largest divisions across NYSEG in the state. There's 162 circuits just in the Oneonta division. So that they're all over the place. So where one might be 12,000 volts, one might be 4,800. It hasn't been converted yet. So there's a lot of differences across.
And cross jurisdictional boundaries too. A circuit can cut across many counties or whatever. So our planners think of it not as geographically, as we might. They look at it from a circuit perspective. So just, some of that would have to be transferred to us to what's happening here versus how they might plan for a whole circuit. I don't know if that makes sense, but
I'm thinking more system-wide at this point because you have this issue across all of NYSEG.
Well, as policies change and, electrification, yes, not just here, but really we are looking systematically. But I know oftentimes, even with outages, if we are responding on outages, and obviously elected officials like to know what's happening in my town, and our engineers are saying, well, it's this circuit, not this town for them. So just making that distinction as we talk further into the future that we may be thinking Otsego County or whatever, and we have to kind of translate that for how our system is set up. But again, you're looking at a high level, and we understand what your points are.
It would seem that somebody among you must have made at least a ballpark, so to speak, estimate of how much power either Otsego County or such and such a set of circuits, if you want to do it that way, is going to need 10 years from now. Have you made any such estimates, and is it going to be 10% more or 100% more?
So when you take in all these external factors, right? EVs, heat pumps, energy efficiency, there's so many state directives right now. I don't think anybody could give an accurate forecast on what that is because there's so much going on right now.
Yeah, but so what are you using as your operating estimates?
So to go,
you must have something to work with.
we do. So we go on base what Bill was describing earlier. We'll look at annual loads on certain circuits or substations at that level, and then we'll forecast out a certain percentage that we think, which varies.
The other thing is the ISO is the one that kind of controls the grid. So they have a better pulse of each region of the state and what the usage is, what the loading is. And they're the ones that are navigating the flow of power around the state. So we're just one entity of it, and we have, because we're a delivery company. We don't generate power at all. We take power and we distribute it among the customers. So to give you an idea of what the load forecasting is in this area, I would imagine that would be more at an ISO level. I mean, I'm sure our control center has that, but that's not information I don't believe that is, that we normally provide to the public.
I guess that sounds like a question that we should maybe invite someone from the ISO to come to talk to us about that, so maybe one of our future full task force meetings.
We'll take that back.
We'll take that back,
Kind of
but-
additional information we can provide.
I mean, Melanie makes a good point that obviously the independent system operator does statewide
Right.
reports, studies. I think they just came out with one, a couple months ago. So that's certainly something to look at, but we very much so do our own work as well.
Okay, I think we've hit after 6 o'clock now.
Wow.
No, this is good.
Wow.
This is great and very informative. So would you guys be amenable if the task force members here had additional questions, if they funneled them up to the leadership committee and then I sent them to Melanie and then you could distribute and then we can email responses out?
It would really help us if things are funneled through the
That was the
leadership
plan.
committee. Only because, number one, we don't want to miss any of them.
Right.
If things come to us with, let's say, a Gmail account or
Right.
something, that could go into spam. We don't want to lose
Right.
anything and have you think we are not trying to respond.
Right.
What we would do too then, and then you could weed out duplicates or things we covered or whatever. That would help us to just keep a nice tight flow.
That was the
And
original plan.
Okay, and because we do have an active rate case,
Sure.
and there could be some things that will be contained in the rate case, and we will direct you to that because it's all right there. And some things, if it's about, critical infrastructure or, where are all of your facilities, we are likely to tell you that we're sorry, but we cannot give that to you. So we would be able to tell you what things we would like to answer but can't.
Right.
Direct you to things that are in the rate case because it might be very good for you to see that in a holistic way. And then answer the ones that are either not in the scope of the rate case or not business sensitive or whatever. And we'll do our best to answer those.
When it comes time to putting the plan together, could we call on any of you here to help us, especially with the distribution and things like that, help us put those sections of the plan together, or at least look through them to make sure they make sense?
I will work through Melanie and she can identify
Who I need to
who would
contact.
be,
Right.
who would be best. I mean,
Okay.
again, we have system planners for both distribution and transmission and other departments, regulatory and others who could be helpful. So it may not be us, we're a
Right.
small segment.
This is five
But we can
departments
direct
right here.
Right.
There are a lot of other departments that we would need, your questions range
Sure.
along the gamut. So we're gonna need to,
Funnel them
ask
down.
the SMEs in those departments for answers to your questions.
Okay.
And another thing to think about, the rate case is basically a year-long process. So what we filed may not be what's gonna be coming at the very end. So a lot of your questions, again, can be answered, we've got our information or requests in with our rate case. What actually comes about at the very end, it's kind of like sausage, whatever
Well,
happens
and
at
that's
the
where
end.
being a
know.
party to the case, the task force, or anyone can become a party to the case. You get all the announcements, you can go to technical conferences, get all of the information. Anyone can provide comments at any time if there are things that you think will work for you. So that's a really good vehicle for doing that. And as I said, we'll send you the case numbers and it's all right there in one spot.
And I think that one of our goals is maybe to be able to target specific areas for business development in particular. And I know when Joe spoke in Cooperstown, he encouraged us to try and contact him so that he would be aware of potential increases in load, whether they be gas or electric. And I think that's something that, is that part of the rate case too? Could
Well,
that be
the
if we
new
could?
programs that Joe mentioned are part of the rate case in the economic development section. You think that that is something that would help to reach the goals of the county? You know, that's where you can weigh in, and that would be helpful. You know, the heat pump program, things like that, that would, you know, maybe reach some of the additional questions and goals. So that's a great avenue, and it's active now. It's not something where, you know, another 3 years will pass before there's the opportunity to look at everything in kind of a holistic way.
Can a municipality be a party to the rate case?
Anyone can be a party to the case.
Okay, there you go.
Group or individual.
I think we are.
Yes.
We're on schedule already?
No, this is
No,
great.
great. Thank you guys very much.
Thank you, everyone.
I just wondered if there's a mechanism for those who are not on the task force to get
I'm assigned a
questions.
seat right up front there, so I'll have everybody's emails and I'll let you know a way that you can submit questions to the leadership committee. Yep, so just make sure you put sign in with your name and email. Yep, thank you very much.
We want to move on to the next part of our meeting, the reports from the committees. And I think buildings and efficiency is who I had first, but and it was still out there. Supply and distribution, are you present? Barbara Ann, economic development. Sure. We'll start with that.
Good evening, everyone. We met on June 12th, and the topics we covered, we had done some research of some plans that included the Buffalo plan, the Syracuse, Albany, and Tompkins County, Erie County, and Rochester. These plans were recruited by the Small Business Development Center through Michelle Caton through a research request, and she was able to pull all of these plans, and as a committee, we're going through them, trying to get the key points of what their outcomes were around economic development. So that's something that is our homework assignment. We're working on that. So by our next meeting, we hope to have some of those key points out of the plan. And then anything else that we felt was actionable items that made sense on some of the other pieces that NYSEG were talking about as far as the whole community development ideas. So we will have that at our next full task force meeting, a full report for you. The other piece that we wanted to mention is as we're looking at helping all businesses of all sizes, one of the things that we felt important to emphasize was the support to small businesses. So for small businesses, there's a lot of great programs through NYSERDA. For example, the PACE program, the Green Jobs, Green New York program, the Community Energy Engagement program, and the Heat Smart Otsego. And these businesses or these programs are already equipped to help small businesses. So we highly recommend that these NYSERDA programs are distributed widely among your task groups if you're working with small businesses. We hope that the county would consider posting some of these NYSERDA programs on their websites, because the more that we're able to assist the small businesses with energy efficiency is really helping our economy, because they are a backbone, a strong backbone to our local economy. And that's all that I have to report out. Yes?
So I'm just curious, when you, in terms of membership for the Otsego County Chamber,
Yes.
do you have a feel for how much small business you capture?
50-50. It's an even split. 50% is a mix of the larger businesses, our hospitals, our education, our manufacturing, and then the other half is small business, mom and pops, Main Street stores, businesses operating out of their home that want to get a potential storefront. So we're helping them navigate the potentials of opening a business and looking at those energy costs and factoring that in. So it is a major contribution to our local economy. Any other questions?
When's your next meeting?
Our next meeting is July 12th, and that is at the Otsego Now offices. And it starts at 9 a.m. Anything else? Anybody? Okay, thank you so much.
I have not been sharing the minutes from each of the other groups, but if the task force members want me to share the minutes from each of the groups, I can certainly start to share those around the whole task force if you want. You can just shoot me an email and let me know.
Karen, did you want to go with your supply and distribution?
Yeah, I can do that and then just also tap right into the RFP if you don't mind.
Okay.
What, May 1st, last task force meeting?
Full task force?
Yeah.
It was softball season.
Okay, I don't know if I gave the
Early
report.
May.
What was it?
It was early in May, I don't.
Okay, because we met May 8th, which I think was either right after or right before. And at that meeting, we had Tim Johnson from Otsego Rural Electric come and speak with us about rural electric, and a couple key points that he mentioned. They have 4,800 metered customers. They have 50 to 70 new customers annually. 80 to 90% of their hydropower electricity is from Niagara. So they're about 8 megawatts base load. He says we're already green because most of our electricity is coming from hydropower. Their local provider of electricity is from seven substations connected to NYSEG networks. They're not regulated by the PSC. There's no SBC charge, and therefore they're not eligible for NYSERDA grants. So that's one thing that I think is unfortunate. They're ahead of other utilities with demand response and automated metering info. They're working on providing broadband service. They received funding for that. They discussed their daily and seasonal peaks. One thing that stuck in my mind was he mentioned that farms going out of business have decreased the usage. Farms are a significant use of energy, and with our unfortunately losing our dairy farms, that decreases our usage. Tim is going to participate on our meetings. He wasn't there in June, but he is interested. Amy Wyatt, one of our members, she presented opportunity community scale solar projects in the NYSEG region. She gave us statistics on the projects that have been put in place and showed a map of the NYSEG three-phase networks. We discussed the need to identify best opportunities for grid improvements that would support more solar. We discussed the need to evaluate potential in national grid region, which appears to have more capacity. We discussed the state renewable objectives and need for information on how changing state policies will affect Otsego County. And as you know, the governor just increased our alternative energy consumption, by 70% by 2000, whatever. I don't know. I wrote it down. I can't remember it. Real aggressive.
70% by 2030, 100% carbon neutral for electricity by 2040.
Yeah. So you're talking
Got a lot to do.
crazy.
Yeah.
And we discussed content in the RFP, and we then met again on June, what was it? June 2. Oh, I've got those there. Sorry. On June 12th, we met again. I had an intern in our office who was working on trying to take property cards and identify heating fuels. We found that the information on the property cards are not necessarily related to gas, but maybe propane gas. So we are taking that information. We're reusing the information that Amy Wyatt got. He was working on it today. I wasn't in the office all day, but we're going to try to revamp what we started with, but I think we'll have better data. So when you go to look at a property card, if this says gas, it could be natural gas, it could be propane gas, it doesn't define it. And that was easily seen with his projections on his map. We talked again about potential impacts of increasing U.S. gas exports on gas prices of the U.S. Russ did a great presentation informing NYSEG maintenance of what's going on with some of the facilities. Many of the iron pipes in Oneonta's gas grid have been replaced. There's new PVC lines put in. We're trying to get more specific in all the pipes in Oneonta that have been replaced. I think I'd ask Greg if you knew some updates on what was being done, but I know on the River Street area there were new pipings going in, and I believe up on the east end also. So we talked about that. Data was presented showing NYSEG's loss of gas in New York State is about 0.3%, which is not too bad. I mean, when you look at the aged infrastructure.
It was actually 0.03%, and there were a lot of questions asked.
Oh, 0.0, not 0.3, because it says 0.3.
A lot of questions asked about where that number came from.
They're true.
I know. I looked at the document you provided us on the fly. I looked at it when I went home, and I think we should talk about that some more because.
Okay, we'll put that on the agenda. And we're going to try to continue to work on some of that gathering some of that data. We talked about some of the gas leaks in northeastern cities and the older grids. Again, replacements and what's being done to make improvements. Our next meeting will be July 16th at 1 p.m. at the Meadows Office Building, Classroom A. In regards to the request for proposal, I did submit it to Andrew Tromley, who is our Onondaga purchasing agent. I then received emails from Leslie to ask if we can add a couple amendments to it concerning potential application under the CFA to get more money to support the RFP as it's going out. Andrew emailed me today, said he had some questions on the RFP. I emailed him back, but haven't heard back from him as of the time I left the office. So I don't know what his questions are, but I might be tapping into you tomorrow. So bottom line, it has not been put out, has not been released. We have gathered names and consultants that you'd like to have invited, so I've compiled that list. So it's not really too late to still add to that list if anybody has any other ideas. So I don't know what his questions are, but I wasn't able to communicate with him today. So we'll be moving on that as soon as we can, and the CFA is due July 26th. So we'll be looking to put that in as a, let's just say, a supplement to have additional funding if the cost does not come in at the $50,000 that we have to work with.
So you see the final RFP going out for bid. That's weeks or days.
Depending on what his questions are, I don't know what they are. It was odd, he sent me Tompkins County's RFP along with his response back, and I'm like, all right. So I don't know. I'll get him on the phone tomorrow, hopefully, and we'll figure it out. I mean, once he's got all the information he needs, usually the turnaround is less than a week for him to get back to say, here's the dates I put in, because the dates he puts in are from the time that they approve the RFP, and then usually 2 weeks at a minimum, sometimes 3 weeks for respondees. So at least another month before you have some results, I would say.
But it's not waiting for the CFA.
Well, I'll talk about that in a minute.
In the new business.
In the new business.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Sure. Bennett Sandler, Buildings and Efficiency. I just want to make a comment about something Karen touched on. At the New York Geo Conference, folks were presenting the rate at which we need to adopt heat pumps in order to achieve the kinds of greenhouse gas reductions that the governor's stating, et cetera. And when you see those numbers, right, you're talking about exponential growth, significant orders of magnitude of adoption, which you can imagine is somewhat stressful for the folks who just must have left the room, right? And they were showing stress. But we've done this twice before. It is not an unprecedented event. Because when coal came on the scene, it was 20 or 30 years when everybody switched off wood. And when oil and gas came on the scene, it was 20 or 30 years when everybody switched. So we've done it before. Don't lose hope. Okay, buildings and efficiency. We we actually were supposed to meet today, and that got postponed due to absenteeism of a variety of folks. We did meet after the last broad group meeting. We sort of retooled or refocused our objectives, which are mostly now directed towards, on the one hand, quantifying a profile of energy consumers in the county by building. And on the other hand, inventorying what resources are available to them in terms of both energy audit assessments and efficiency upgrades. And this is for existing building stock. And I could say there's a third branch there, which is focused around what we can do in terms of new construction and building codes to maximize building science that we know and reduce energy or certainly the carbon footprint in new buildings. So that's mostly what we're focused on are the two tracks. The new construction stuff I think we'll get to, but right now we're crunching data. There's a variety of folks in different sectors who are crunching data. Tony's got the entire county parcel database. It sounds like you guys have been working together somewhat to get, or you've been doing coincident work that maybe we ought to touch base on to come up with similar attributes. And the whole idea here is, we've got so many single-family households, we've got so many mixed-use businesses, et cetera. We'll come up with, I think, what a reasonable amount of granularity around quantifying buildings, their average energy or actual energy consumption, and what we would assume we could achieve given the existing resources that are available to do efficiency upgrades and beneficial electrification or swapping over to heat pumps.
Bennett, will the stuff that you're doing, will that come with it an estimation of increased load?
Well, it's weird. So, my knee-jerk is to suggest that efficiency upgrades ought to reduce load, but I think what you're asking about is, if we move off gas and over to electricity, or off any of the delivered fuels, really. I mean, the other delivered fuels are much more economical to replace more quickly, right, than gas, because gas is relatively cheap. It will allow us, because we're going to have numbers, so we can do some calculations about that. But again, it's funny, we're talking about actually parsing data by town, but the reality is we really should be parsing it by circuit, right? So it might be kind of interesting. I don't know if we can get a GIS layer from them, which allows us to do that or not, but that's an interesting thing to throw to NYSEG and National Grid and the co-op. Right? We've got 23,000 housing units and the co-op has 4,800. They're not an insignificant player in all of this.
Right. So the co-op, NYSEG,
And National Grid.
National Grid, and then parse the data out by line as opposed to jurisdiction.
By some level of detail within the distribution, absolutely. That would make sense.
Maybe that's a way to work with the supply and distribution group.
When's your next meeting?
July 10th. So we meet virtually. I can send you a Zoom invitation if you want to participate.
Okay. When is it, Bennett?
July 10th, 10 a.m. And then our next one is the 24th. We have 2 in July when everyone's around and got their head in the game.
Okay.
So the group understands this in terms of actual system load and residential is a little less than 50%. And then the bulk of it is then, the other 51% is roughly split between commercial and industrial.
Right.
So you're only looking at half the pie when you're looking at the residents. Probably not Otsego County, it's not quite that split. We're probably a little heavier in the residential because we don't have as much commercial activity.
But do they break the ag out of that?
What's that?
Do they break
They don't.
ag
They
out?
didn't break ag out, but
No,
ag would
just
be.
says commercial.
Yeah, they just said it would probably be in the commercial side, not the industrial. So there's more load to the puzzle than just that.
There is, and So one other thing that's changed, well, two things within our committee structure, and I think I sent this up to you guys on the executive team, but Joe Yelich is out,
Oh, he is?
and Tom Brindley is in. Tom's been great. He's the new superintendent for Oneonta School District.
I didn't
So
know.
in and what made me think, I didn't say this, so Jonathan Flight's on our team,
Yes.
right? And he's brought in several of his engineers to our team, which is great. So I expect to have a lot at the commercial side, a lot better understanding on the commercial side, which is great. And then the most recent addition to our team was actually Dan Maskin from OFO, which is good because what do we, the LMI population's almost 20% in Otsego County. And so far, I can tell you from NYSERDA's perspective, they have not cracked that nut. Not figured out how best to serve the LMI population in terms of efficiency upgrades. Sure.
First, I mean, everybody knows, I think, I want to grab the bull by the horns and actually go after the big enchilada of energy as a whole. But at the same time, I understand there's low-hanging fruit potentially. And in terms of electricity, I think there is an opportunity there to we talked about alternate fuels that people have right now.
Yeah.
Well, one of the fuels that some people have is electricity, and it's resistive heating, and it's really highly inefficient. So just switching from resistive heating to resistive electric heating to heat pumps, air source heat pumps, whatever, that can be that will reduce the load. Actually, that will reduce the demand actually for electricity. So that's kind of a win-win all around.
10% of the housing units are electric. I would guess that a large proportion of them, but maybe I'm wrong, are going to be co-op consumers.
Well,
I know what you're saying, which is that you get a lot of folks who can't afford to fill their kerosene or propane tank, and so they turn their stove on and open the door. Yeah.
I think Amy said it best. It's expensive to be poor.
Yeah, there's an unreasonable large portion of resources for low. That's I agree.
I wondered if that's something that we can kind of take on as something that's good for the community, that's also good for the environment.
I hear you. As I say, NYSERDA has not been able to crack that nut. There's funding through the program that Heat Smart's been working on, as well as some of the other NYSERDA programs to try and figure out how best to bring efficiency upgrades and heat pumps, air source heat pumps mostly, to the LMI population. And I'm sort of looking for some leadership from them. I think it's just a matter of them putting more money at it. Their typical model is 20% break point, and that doesn't cut it for folks who can't even pay the energy bill. So, the flip side of it on a purely pragmatic standpoint is I don't know how much of the total energy picture that makes up, and I'm not dismissing. And so I'm happy Dan's on the group. So we have a nice spread in our group in terms of the residential through the commercial and the big energy hogs, because the hospitals are certainly our most significant energy consumers.
One of the things we found that was a surprise to me is that when you talk about peak load profiles, that for electricity there's a peak in the summertime, obviously, for air conditioning, but there's also a peak in the wintertime,
Right.
which is kind of counterintuitive to me. But some of that must be resistive heating, I think.
Yeah.
Or something, I don't know.
Firing
So-
your oil burner uses a ton of electricity. There you go. My electric bill triples in the winter because my oil burner's running. Fan.
Oh, yeah?
They use a ton of electric.
You want a heat pump?
I need one bad.
Any other questions or
Makes
comments?
sense to me.
Hey everyone, I'm Mark Davies. I'll report on the May and the June meetings. So we really spent the May meeting, we'd already kind of lined up what we were going to focus on with regards to our tasks. So our first task we were really going to dive in on was looking at the strengths and weaknesses of all the different energies. So we spent the May meeting trying to figure out how do we evaluate the strengths and weaknesses of particular energy. So Gina Keel, a member of our committee, took a rubric, kind of an academic rubric, to judge strengths and weaknesses, and we spent May trying to take that thing and tweak it and really make it work for Otsego County. So, and I'll spend a little more time in this rubric because I think it really has been helpful to framing our discussions. So what we came up with as a group is a little different than what the academic rubric was, but we looked at 10 different areas that we were going to rank the strengths and weaknesses of all the different energies. So those areas are this. Number 1, investment and economic feasibility. 2, availability, size of resource. 3, time of use concerns, so base or peak load. 4, geographic distribution and constraints. Then we begin to add on some new criteria to really kind of capture what we were trying to do here. So we have protection of common resources, land, forest, water quality, availability, wildlife. 6, distribution of benefits, costs, risk. 7, democratic choices, public preferences. 8, ethics, the idea of environmental or social justice, that if we're using particular energies, we might be impacting particular groups more so than others. 9, aesthetics, which we're looking at kind of our view shed. Frankly, we've had some discussion about maybe that should be wrapped into 5, protection of common resources, but for now it's sitting on its own. And then lastly, sustainability, benefits overall time for all groups. So that's our 10 kind of targets within the rubrics. We then created a long list of the different energies that we could analyze. And top of my head, and I don't have my great spreadsheet, this is my really awful notes from the last meeting, we have 19 different energy sources. So we divided those up, and everyone is diving in deep and really doing a lot of research, and then we brought it back to the group. So June was spent looking, we only got halfway through the list, and each person who analyzed the strengths and weaknesses of a particular energy, they then ranked it and then told the group, and we talked about it. So in some places, naturally, there was a little bit of debate. Sometimes there's quite a bit of debate on terms of whether that's a strength, or is it neutral, or is it a weakness. But in the end, we were able to get through half of those, which means we're right on target with what we want, and we're going to spend our July meeting addressing the other half. I'll say we've had some, in my mind, great productive conversations. We have really been able to kind of fine-tune it when we haven't felt completely strong about something. We've come up with a new system to kind of rank them. So that's been really pleasant. I think we've been working well as a committee and kind of moving forward. So we plan on having that completely done, and certainly we'll be getting that to all of you as soon as we have it completely finished. Any questions?
I just had a idea that to give to your subcommittee as a possible thing to look into, which would be the role of our forested land or ag land as a carbon sink, and like a way to value that.
Dave, do you mind writing that down?
I didn't get it. Can you say it again?
So, yeah, thank you, Danny. All right, so great, thank you, and we will certainly add that in. And I know within ag, that's become now, there's a lot more ag that's beginning to shift to that, which is really interesting. So we will certainly look at that.
You might want to talk to Phoebe about that, because I know she's put together a proposal for some.
Right, yeah. Excellent, thank you. Any other, thank you for that point, I appreciate that.
No problem.
Anybody else? Beautiful. Thanks.
Next meeting?
Oh, I think, I didn't do a great job right now. July 30th, that's what we've got, right?
I think July 30th.
July 30th is what we agreed upon.
And?
We've been meeting at,
July 30th, the next meeting?
we rolled it back to 5. So we've been meeting about 6, we rolled it back to 5 just to try to get done a little earlier. We've been meeting at the Town of Otsego, Town of Oneana building, and yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, Mark.
Thank you.
Huh? Yeah. Me? What? Me?
New business.
New business. Lord have mercy. Oh God, I have to do the climate action plan? Okay, climate action plan, we know it's all out there. We haven't done a tremendous amount of research on it yet, but I think we're gonna be looking into it. Michelle might know. Are you doing climate action plan? Anything about climate action plan?
No, I think you summed it up very well, Leslie.
Okay, yeah.
Unfunded
mandate currently.
Climate and community protection.
I think what one of the things I'm looking for is to maybe try to find someone at the state level who would be willing to come talk to us about the implications of the new legislation that was passed.
I've read previous iterations of it, and it seemed that there would be, you know, kind of a council set up of upstate and downstate representatives to discuss climate planning priorities and how to facilitate the transition. But I think it's like 75-25 downstate to upstate in terms of the distribution according to what I read. And there's like a number of like, I took a lot of notes on prior drafts of legislation, so I can kind of circulate that around. But, you know, to me, from an initial perspective, there's a huge, I don't think that the legislature considered their respective capacity of upstate versus downstate New York to transition effectively, plan for, implement, facilitate the transition compared to downstate. So I think that there needs to be a real discussion about how we build that capacity and how we utilize it to our advantage.
It's easier upstate or not?
I think it's higher, maybe equally difficult, but the capacity to find a solution is higher downstate than here. Strongly argued.
Just because they have more.
They just have more staff. They have more capacity and more population, more people.
Depends on what concentrating.
Yeah.
Engineering, planning at a local level. You know, the county staffs are bigger.
Right. I mean, if you look at Otsego County, we have Karen and Tammy and Eric and Shane and Danny.
And 39 of us, right?
Well, as planners, right? But yes, and we have the 39 of us, but in terms of planners or certified planners, I mean, that's it for the entire county, whereas some counties have like 10 planners on staff and cities have like 10 planners on staff, so.
And then there's municipalities that have only, you know, massive engineering departments.
Right,
Greg is our
engineering.
only city engineer, and, you know, yes, he got his staff, but got the engineering department in Oneonta, but aside from that, you know, our other smaller municipalities outside of town of Oneonta and a couple others don't really have a lot of engineering expertise available to them without bidding it out.
I mean, I'm aware of the legislation. I try to have some influence on it. I think it's a better piece of legislation than what came out the gate a couple years ago. But you know, I wouldn't say it's perfect by any means. But it does have some really bold goals if we want to adhere to them, and hopefully we all do. But you know, I think ultimately it's going to involve some push from our standpoint against the utilities, frankly, including NYSEG, to step up to the plate and ensure that the grid, the infrastructure that they're providing for is consistent with implementing what the intent of that legislation is.
Hence why I think the NYSEG folks were kind of harried because
Right.
it's falling down on the utilities.
And I'm paying attention to the rate case carefully too, and I mean, I can, as an electrical engineer, I can look at what the grid is and I can see we're nowhere close to achieving what that legislation seeks to do. So the question is, how do we get there? What are the steps that have to happen to get there in the time that the legislation
I
describes?
thought they were putting together a work group on high to look at how to implement the new legislation.
There's like a climate
Right.
action council, like Danny
Right.
said, and then I guess the good aspect of it is it's now co-chaired by both DEC and NYSERDA, so that kind of puts both the regulatory piece of it and also the action piece of it, NYSERDA, together, which is good.
So we'll do some more, Keith and Danny, you know, any notes that you have, if you'd like to share with the group, that'd be great. Your insights into the action plan, or the new climate legislation. All right, so there are 2 CFA opportunities that we wanted to make you aware of that the county is looking into applying for. One is with Amy Wyatt. She's not here right now, but a member of our task force is working with Tammy and Karen. Okay, so I'll just give you a little background. It's on a helping the county and communities within the county who have already taken the Climate Smart Pledge, Communities Pledge, and then communities who are looking to take the pledge to help them get the steps and actions that they need to become a climate smart, a certified climate smart community. So one of the big steps is doing greenhouse gas inventories. So Amy will get around all the details of it, but that is going in, that CFA application is definitely going into place, and it's the Climate Institute. I know, Danny, can you speak a little bit about it?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
So essentially, in a nutshell, what this is, it's a capacity building coalition, if you will. You know, with Amy Wyant, Tammy Harris, myself, Gary Kutnick, Karen Sullivan at the county. Our goal is to help municipalities conduct certain, actions that would get them points to achieve climate smart community certification of different levels. The easiest and most low-hanging fruit that we're looking at right now is helping municipalities with greenhouse gas inventories. We'd be following a model that was utilized in the Hudson Valley. The acronym is CAPI. I kind of, at the top of my head, I forgot what it stands for, but it's a way to train municipal leaders, town board members, planning board members, interested volunteers to be able to collect, analyze, and present data that would help them quantify their greenhouse gas emission sources and help them figure out an action plan on how to reduce them. Basically, the goal is, since we don't have like a large scale, like town, municipality level planning, presence outside of Karen's department, we want to be able to train local champions to advance these CSC certification goals. And the way we do that is by getting as many of them to participate in like an academy or an institute as possible. That way we have people who are trained who can carry on the goals after they graduate from the institute.
So that's one proposal. And to be clear, the county is actually applying for these proposals. The other proposal we're looking at is through ESD, through the Mohawk Valley Regional Economic Development Council. And that proposal is to match the funding that the county has already put up to hire a consultant to help us along the process with public outreach, public engagement, research, background research, and those things. So one of the things that I know came out of one of the groups was doing a greenhouse gas inventory, to which Amy said, oh my God, this is going to cost you so much money. So between the proposal that Danny was just talking about, and perhaps applying for more money for the task force itself, we'll be able to get those things done. Hopefully we'll be able to apply for that. There's been a little bit of question. I talked to Allison Novak from REDC today because there is a caveat that work cannot be done or funds expended before December. And I know we were on a little bit shorter timeline with our RFP, so we would not be able to expend any funds from the county that the county has allocated until RADC, through the CFA process, allocated funds to us. She all but said to me, please apply, please apply, please. Please apply for this. We understand that Otsego County is going through the planning process for energy right now. And we really have been watching, and we would love for you to apply. So that says to me, if someone's begging me to apply for funding, that as long as we put together a good application package, that we should be successful in getting funding. But we just wanted to put out the caveat that we will not be able to actually hire the consultant and have money expended before December until the REDC announces the awards. So we're talking about this in the leadership group, and we're trying to make sure that we don't stall the work of the task force by trying to apply for more money to help us on our path. So we'll be figuring that out sooner than later because the application deadline is the end of July. Yes?
So I just got an email from Andrew Tromley who said he can have the RFP out by Friday. I'm going to talk to him in the morning.
Okay.
So do you want to hold off on releasing the RFP and coordinate the timing with the consolidated funding, or put it out there?
Could he put in the caveat?
That's what you're talking, we'll talk in the morning.
Okay.
Okay.
So I was trying to understand all that. It sounds like there's a $50,000 as it was planned, and then the addition, the CFA thing you're talking about would be in addition to that?
Right, so we can apply for up to $100,000. So that would bring the total to $150,000, which I thought was a whole heck of a lot of money, that perhaps we didn't necessarily need $150,000. There's also a 50% match. So that's why we could apply for up to $100,000 because we have the $50,000 match. My thought was to apply for $50,000 so that we could have $100,000 to ensure that we could get a greenhouse gas inventory done and make sure that our public outreach and stakeholder group, that we were doing due diligence in making sure that the community was involved in the plan. And having facilitated discussions, facilitated productive discussions when we all come together to start writing the plan. So that is the plan. I mean, the 5 of us are doing the best we can in organizing and collecting all the research that you guys have been diligently working on. We just want to make sure that we have someone who can properly shepherd us through this process and help us collect all the good research that you have been doing. And if you need extra help, that's another body that can help you do the research that you need to do. So we want to make sure that we have the resources to put together an actionable, practical, stakeholder-based plan. So, I mean, just because we get $100,000 doesn't necessarily mean we have to spend $100,000. Because, I mean, I used to work for the Department of Defense, and I would see, you know, a plan written that was magnificent, and then it would go up on the shelf. We definitely don't want to see that happen. So, practical, actionable, and then done correctly.
How much of this is about the greenhouse gas inventory? Because I know our subcommittee kind of had a discussion about that too. And
It's not.
yeah, because we were worried because it's really hard to ever get anybody to agree on how you calculate that stuff.
Right. It's not based because I knew the other CFA grant was going in. So it's not wholly based on being able to do a greenhouse gas inventory. The funds became available. Danny and I were at the Otsego Now offices when they did the presentation for the CFA process. And we both leaned over to each other and went, ooh, that sounds really interesting. So, and Danny can talk more to, you know, what it takes to put together a stakeholder-based plan. But again, he's got his job as the county rep and the city planning commission, and Danny from OCCA. So, you know, there's only so many parts I can rip Danny into before Danny explodes. So we don't want Danny to explode. Danny's brain is too valuable. So that's in a nutshell what we're trying to accomplish with bringing more money on board. I think that's all I had about the CFA grants. Stay tuned. We will let you know if a CFA grant is submitted for this. We will certainly circulate the application, the final application, so you can all see it. Oh, and as far as the RFP, I know there were questions about who gets to see the RFP before it goes out. I'm out. I'm out of the process because I am not a county employee. So technically I can't see it and I haven't seen it. So Meg and Michelle are the ones that are taking care of and Karen are the ones taking care of that RFP at this point. The next big meeting is September 4th, full task force meeting at Oneonta Town Hall at 5 p.m. As best we can, we'll keep trying to shift the meetings around so that
When did you say that?
September 4th, Oneonta Town Hall, 5 p.m.
I just wanted to say thanks to Barbara Ann for coordinating to get NYSEG here. And I think having experts come and talk to us at the beginning of our big bi-monthly meetings was a good way to go about it. So if any of you task force members have ideas or also guests on who we could have come talk to us, send it on up to our group and we'll consider it.
Any other questions for NYSEG, send along to me and I will send them. Melanie and I were just talking before she left, and she said if we can have one point person from the task force, that would make her life easier. So if you have any other questions, send them to me and I will send them along to them. And if any of our non-task force members who are here also have questions, I have your email if you sign the sheet. I will send you an email with the PowerPoint presentation from NYSEG, and then you'll have my email and you can email me questions and I can pass them along as well.
So Leslie, you have questions, and everybody here has questions that I provided to the whole task force in the spirit of transparency. So anyway, those are my questions.
Yes, she has those.
Yep.
Yep.
Thanks.
So I was just curious, kind of a question for some discussion. I mean, do we feel it'd be beneficial to reach out to NYSO to see if we can get, someone, like a liaison from them to serve with us? Because from what I understand, a lot of the kind of, grid capacity, kind of energy planning issues goes through them. And NYSEG just takes care of the distribution side. So I think it'd be worth trying to reach out to them and see if we can get something.
I got the impression that Melanie would try to hook us up with them.
Yeah.
Because she knows who to speak to.
To push questions out to them.
But I mean, to be honest, when I heard that, I mean, the grid itself is NYSEG's grid. It's their physical system. NYSO is, they're kind of like in the control room of where electricity flows in any given time across the state. But it is NYSEG's grid. So, I mean, the questions that we are having really do go to NYSEG, I think.
Good. And then,
Well,
I mean, to some extent, maybe they're NYSEG questions too, but in terms of grid capacity and things to do to beef up the grid to make it conducive to renewables or anything else.
They can't do their job without NYSO's
Right.
data.
Keith, I got the
Yes.
impression that the NYSO was the one who had the information about the specific loads.
The overview for the, yes, for the whole state.
And the specific loads in the different areas, so that they had more idea of it. I'm sure they have to work with NYSEG about their capacity.
Well, NYSO has this publication called Power Trends that comes out annually. There's a lot of good information in it. But yeah.
Certainly can't hurt to have a representative.
Either way, it'd be beneficial because clearly they're going to coordinate with one another, and so we want to have both people in the same room so that we're all on the same page.
Yep, agreed. So I can email Melanie and see who her contact at NYSO, or if anybody here has a contact at NYSO, shoot it to me, and then one of us from the leadership committee will get in touch with them to ask them if they'd like to come up with. And if anybody has any other suggestions of people as technical advisors or members, let one of the 5 of us know.
Thank you.
Sure.
Yeah, thank you, everyone.